Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Okay, karma has 4 general characteristics. Again, general, there's lots of intricacies, but good framework. Understanding these provides us the basic framework to understand karma and its effects. Karma is definite. That's the first point. This is definite. No escape. Gonna happen. So that should have you breathe easy right off the bat. But that also applies to good karma. Karma is definite in that happiness comes from previously created constructive actions, and suffering comes from previously created destructive actions, or wants. It never occurs the other way around. An action is not inherently good or bad, but is designated as virtuous or non-virtuous or neutral in relation to the result it brings. And I think this is a really hard concept for people because, we tend to think of good and evil and right and wrong and reward and punishment. But the Buddha's understanding of it is this results suffering, so this would be unwholesome. This result is pleasurable, so we're going to call it virtuous or wholesome. And so it's not identifying you did this thing and this comes. It was more just noticing the mechanisms. And that, there's no big evil force or anything like that, or wrathful judgment. It's simply, well, when this happens, there's this kind of result. This happens, there's this kind of result. And by looking at the results, we backtrack and go, okay, we'll call that virtuous because you had pleasurable. This one's unwholesome because of this result. And so, it's hard for us to wrap our head because it's so easy to go bad thing, punishment, good thing, reward, right? But it's more nuanced than that and much more intricate, really. But fundamentally, doing something unwholesome is just not going to bring a pleasant result. It just doesn't work that way. Just like planting an apple seed is not get orange tree. Just not going to happen. You can graft certain trees, right? And you can do different. Okay. Always looking for an angle. Okay. So it's definite. And there's going to be some elaboration here. Karma that yields happiness is virtuous. Karma that yields unhappiness or suffering is non-virtuous karma. The other karma, which creates a neutral feeling, is the other, neutral karma. So, this has just been tried and true right through, the Dharma teachings. You're going to find similar things in other spiritual avenues as well. Pali commentaries explain nuances of the term virtue and non-virtue. From a psychological and spiritual viewpoint, non-virtue indicates something that is psychologically or spiritually unhealthy. From an ethical perspective, it is to be censured and shown disapproval. From the standpoint of its cause, it is produced by defilements, and from the viewpoint of its result, if it produces suffering. So a couple things to break down there. One is, if we're, psychologically, if we're doing unhealthy things, we're going to probably have some unhealthy results. And unhealthy in terms of my relationships, I'm probably going to have some unhealthy relationships. There's no good, evil, right, wrong there. There's just sort of, recognizing, as it's indicated here, is it spiritually healthy? Is it not? Is it contributing to spiritual growth or well-being or not? And then ethical perspective, it is to be censured and shown disapproval. Why, that makes you feel like you're in church, doesn't it? What's really commonly taught is to know what is to be cultivated and what is to be abandoned. So, what is to be abandoned is these unhealthy, unethical choices. So it's nice that they're bringing you sort of psychological and then more of a religious, ethical perspective. And then from just the standpoint of its cause, it's produced by defilements, and from the viewpoint of its result. So what that means is, I don't think anyone ever woke up and said, I'm really going to ruin my life, create a terrible future self and have a lot of pain coming in. That's generally not what we do. Defilements, we're talking about those misperceptions of understanding and our quest for happiness. And so out of the confusion of feeling myself as independent, you independent, and not recognizing interdependence, not recognizing how karma plays out. The view of defilements, well, we're going to create some karma, either healthy or unhealthy, often a lot of unhealthy. And so again, it's not we're a bad person. Well, I just don't know better, right? I'm not seeing myself or the world accurately. I'm confused. And viewpoint that I like to see is just, we all kind of are afflicted. We all have an ailment. We don't see clearly. So again, it's not bad people doing bad things. It's confused people doing harmful things out of confusion. Underneath all of that, we're pure. We're okay, And so that's where I think the bigger distinction around sort of punishment reward, it's really much more out of my confusion. I do some things that really undermine how I would like to live. Out of my confusion, I accidentally do some pretty good things that allow me to live in a particular way. And so we kind of play out of confusion. We live our lives out of this confusion, and we create this types of karma, some of which will have a really nice result, some of which not a nice result. But sorry, I need another sip of water here. So out of this confusion, we will relate cause and result inaccurately. Somebody does something harmful like steal and get money, think I stole, I got money, good result. And but there's a much bigger bandwidth of how that's going to play out. And so for a temporary pleasure, I will do something that will actually cause me a long-term negative result. And so the idea of, this is definite, just as simply cause and effect. Nothing happens without a cause. And what the Buddha saw in his journey was, how these things play out on a much longer playing field. So they're just giving you different, from different views. This is how we would look at it. But again, none of it's we're a bad person. Somebody did this bad thing. Karma will get even with them. We kind of have that thing. Yeah, they'll catch up to them. But it's not like that at all. It's much more of out of our confusion, we come, often just keep digging a hole, and of habits and conditioning that aren't very helpful, and then we get more confused and we do maybe some more harmful things. Or we, have some love and some care, some good karma has been in our lives. We've been loved and nurtured, and we're more able to be engaged in things that are healthier and kinder. And so that's around suffering contrarily. Virtue is spiritually and psychologically healthy and beneficial, ethically commendable, not produced under the influence of gross defilements, and leads to fortunate results. So very different, that just sounds better, doesn't it? And, so as we look at, we can look at by the result, and then you'll know. But key point here is it's not produced under the influence of gross defilements. We have defilements in a sense of habits and condition we call karma and klesha. And these afflictive ways that we see ourselves in the world. But some are very gross, in which case we really can act in really harmful ways. Some are more subtle defilements, and so are more capable of allowing this natural goodness within us take part in our decision-making process. And it's going to lead to much, much better results. And then being quoted from one of the texts. If friends, one who enters and dwells amid unwholesome states, could dwell happily in this very life without vexation, despair, and fever, and if, with the breakup of the body after death, he could expect a good destination, then the Blessed One would not praise the abandoning of unwholesome states, but because one who enters and dwells amid unwholesome states dwells in suffering in this very life with vexation, despair, and fever. And because he can't expect a bad destination with the breakup of the body after death, the Blessed One praises the abandoning of unwholesome states. If friends, one who enters and dwells amid wholesome states, could dwell in suffering in this very life with vexation, despair, and fever, and if with the breakup of the body after death, he could expect a bad destination, then the Blessed One would not praise the acquisition of wholesome states. But because one who enters and dwells amid wholesome states dwells happily in this very life, without vexation, despair, and fever, and because he can expect a good destination with the breakup of the body after death, the Blessed One praises the acquisition of wholesome states. So a couple things there. You may notice a little repetition. Anybody notice that at all? A little bit? As you read the Pali Canon, you're going to see a lot of repetition, and that's conducive to oral transmission, right? So it's going to be very repetitive. It's going to have a certain cadence, and that's the way it can be passed down, through centuries. So a lot of repetition. That was very small repetition. You actually read the Canon, you'll get a lot. But the point being made there, which I found interesting, was two things. One is, if I am in these unwholesome states, in this very life, I'm going to suffer. I don't have to wait till next life. And likewise, if I'm in wholesome states, I can be happy in a good way in this life. But they did sort of couch the phrase, if one can dwell this way and in this life be this way, and body dies and next life. So it's kind of like an end-or kind of deal. But I thought it was really nice, because I think we can all recognize that if I live a more wholesome life right now, I can be happier right now. I don't have to wait. And it's very difficult to have happiness, peace, and ease doing things that are unwholesome. We don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel good about things. We're feeding certain attributes around greed and anger and frustration, and those mental states by their very nature are unpleasant, right? It's unpleasant to be angry. It's unpleasant to be resentful. It's unpleasant to be frustrated. It's unpleasant to be desirous, and those are not pleasant, peaceful states. But pleasant, peaceful states can happen, by doing things you feel good about, right? Good ethics, good virtue. And so that can happen right now. It's very tangible, very poignant. And so, it's just the reasoning. Again, if one could be a scoundrel and be happy, Buddha wouldn't say, don't be a scoundrel. Kind of interesting. So let's continue on here. Dear friends, one who enters and dwells amid wholesome states could dwell in suffering in this very life with vexation, despair, and fever, and if with, well, no, I'm rereading that. It sounded very familiar. The questions of the Bodhisattva sutras here, let me get this thing out of my way. As in planting, happiness and misery are effects from the deeds performed. How can a bitter seed yield a sweet fruit? Seeing this universal truth, the wise should think evil doing brings painful effects, while good deeds always lead to peace and happiness. It may seem that some people experience satisfaction after engaging in destructive actions, such as taking revenge on another person. The immediate pleasure they experience is due to their distorted way of thinking, while the result of their present action will be suffering in the future. Similarly, someone may go through physical difficulties doing prostrations, full body prostrations, but the long-term result of this action will be happiness. And so, that's where they're just touching upon the distinction, how we can misunderstand cause and effect. Doing prostrations painful, so I'm doing prostrations. Hurts. That's not very pleasant. But it's it's a delayed response. So you're creating your future karma with a wholesome activity. And then it's a good point they're making. The pleasure someone may draw from a malicious activity also is really pleasure drawn from a distorted way of viewing self and others. And, not really pleasure at all, and certainly not lasting. So just pausing there for a moment. Anyone, this is just sort of pretty straightforward. All happiness comes from wholesome activities, all unhappiness from unwholesome. That's the guiding principle. And they did throw in neutral. So there's a lot of neutral karma. There's a lot of things that we're affected by throughout the day that, just aren't that interesting one way or another, don't affect us much one way or another. It's kind of like my hot water I'm drinking here. It's not tea, not a mango lassi, it's just hot water. I like hot water. Learned to drink it when I was a monk. I used to drink hot water. I thought, who in the world drinks hot water? It's weird. Then I started drinking hot water. Actually, in Tibetan, it's called chu sapo. Chu means water, sapo hot. So I'm actually having chu sapo. I'm more interested now. Can I have a chu sapo, please? Sounds much better, doesn't it? But a lot of things in our lives are fairly neutral. They're not really one way or another. They're just kind of. So a lot of our karma is around neutral too. So that category is always there. Things that are.
Small question. So the idea of intention, from what I understand, is more important than the outcome. And so if you have, really positive intention and you have a bad outcome, does that end up being neutral?
So the question for everyone online is a very good question. We think about karma, a complete karma. I'm going to go with 3 components: intention, action, and result. Okay, so complete karma: intention, action, result. The highest weight's always going to be intention. Okay, the action we do is another part. So maybe I intended to do something, but the action was never completed. Like I was going to cheat someone, but then I couldn't actually do it. They caught me or whatever. And then you have an outcome, a result. But the result in this case isn't how it turned out. It's how you feel about how you turned out. In other words, I intended to hurt someone. I hurt someone. And then I felt pretty good about it. Yeah, they got theirs. I got even with them. Right? So that's a complete, thorough, unwholesome karma. Intended to harm, did the harm, kind of celebrated about it. I could have intended it, done the harm, and felt bad about it right away. Like, oh. And so that's going to have a different weight, right? Than feeling really good about it. So all three components are playing a role in how it plays out in the ultimate way. I could have intended to do something and then, couldn't really complete the action, and then could have been upset that I couldn't have harmed someone, or I could have had some relief that I didn't follow through, right? So, but of all these things, the intention is always going to be the heaviest weight. So I could be trying to help someone and I do it, but the outcome maybe is harmful in some way, right? But who's to say it's harmful in some way? It's always difficult to say how an event's harmful or not harmful, because there's so many things that come from an event. For example, pretty clear to say over 1 million Tibetans were killed due to the Chinese invasion and all that. Very clear. There's, black and white. That's harmful, right? And then you look a little more deeply, because of that invasion and all that, how many Tibetans came out of Tibet, and Dalai Lama's out here, and then how much good in the world because of that, right? So even something very clearly harmful also has these other effects, which have ripples beyond what we may otherwise know or think about. As a matter of fact, there's Tibetans that spent years, decades in prison and tortured, and would share that was some of the best years of their lives. One of Lama Allen's teachers that he learned from said, I lost everything, lost my family, lost this and that's that. And but it actually gave me a way to practice that before I was only intellectual. Like I really got to understand compassion. I really got to understand stuff. I really got to use this stuff in a much more meaningful way. And so even, these outcomes that we see as terrible might have some, benefit in them. So they really break it up as intention, the action itself, and your personal sort of feeling about it. And so generally, even if you had a good intention and the outcome seemed to be not so good to you, it's still probably a positive karma. If you, especially if it went sideways and then you felt bad about it, went sideways, you're really trying to help someone, but went sideways. The emphasis that Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo always puts in is just always focusing on intention. What's your real motivation? Like that's really something we have some real agency over, and will always have the highest weight. The point, though, is definite, is that it means, should I scare you first, or should I just not?
Yeah,
okay. Well, karma, technically, everything movement of the mind. So every thought, conscious thought, thing that you say and thing that you do, just think of a constant tape recorder. Yeah, it's kind of
sounds like Big Brother.
Yeah, it's just like, how this is, and so it can be intimidating. But as we talked about last time, a lot of our thoughts are not conscious. Most of our thoughts are not, they just pop up. And then it's, what do we do with the thought? once we have it. I'd like to kill so-and-so. And then you go, wow, that's a pretty crazy thought. I don't want to kill so-and-so. Now that's my response. That's the merit is, I'm not going there. As opposed to, the thoughts that just arise. I mean, if you just think about dreams, right? You didn't decide to dream this or that. It just pops up. So a lot of our thoughts are ethically neutral until we engage with them. And so for me, I think the way to always approach karma is really about healthy and unhealthy. It's not good, bad, evil, this or that. It's just, this is going to be healthier. This is going to be less healthy, wholesome, unwholesome. It's much more of, we're underneath all this confusion, we're already okay. And out of our confusion, we act in ways that are either more conducive to a spiritual path or less. A healthier and more well-being or less happiness. And it's all done out of confusion, and nobody's a bad person. They're just confused, and now they're confused and doing really harmful things, which doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable or put in prison or anything like that. Just understanding their very nature is confused, and they're not beyond repair. Maybe this lifetime not going to happen, but underneath that, it's okay. They're okay. And then that way we won't get into the whole beating ourselves up and I did this terrible thing, or when you get into studying karma like this, you can get anxious, right? I mean, like the tape recorder thing, they could especially when they tell you, 1 minute of anger can, blow up, all kinds of great merit in just one moment. And then you go, man, I screamed. I've gotten angry a lot in my life, and I remember Park City, Utah. I'm a monk. We're traveling with the monks. The monks are giving a teaching, and they're giving a teaching on the 4 thoughts, which are the 4 thoughts to turn the mind to Dharma, rare and precious life, impermanence, karma, and the suffering of psychic existence. And so anyway, I'm, Geshe's giving a teaching. Everybody's there. It's all cozy. Everybody's having little snacks, warm, fuzzy. I had to go make some calls and set up some things. I come back in the room. Everybody's like freaked out. And, he's teaching, so, if you accidentally kill so-and-so and all the hell realms and this and that. And, he's just talking about, if you kill something, definitely bad luck. And these people's eyes are like wide open. Like, well, I've hunted, I've done this. And, I'm sitting there going, wow, this is awkward. Everybody's terrified. And, so any questions? I go, I got a question. Is there, anything you might do to offset any harmful karma? Oh, yeah. No, there's, but literally, it can, freak people out. So, Jetsima will point out that her teachers have very clearly said that the only way from this human life that we currently have, that you would go to some lower realm, like those things that they talk about, hell rooms, would be basically if you're a sadist, like if you're just sadist, you're just delight in harming people, you engage in that level, kind of like that. And most people sitting around our Buddhist retreats are not doing that, generally speaking. And even Milarepa, who with great anger and violence killed a lot of people, was able to become awakened in that same lifetime. So, you're probably okay. Okay. Yeah. If you bring apple strudel to the next Dharma retreat, I think that'll offset a lot of negative karma. To make offerings to the Buddhas. So as we engage with this, let's let go of all that worry and fear and just really work more with our kind of confusion, you know, like what really brings you happiness and what really brings you suffering. Do you feel better about who you are when you do things you feel good about? You know, do you feel better about who you are when you're, you know, avoid something that you know you should have done? Is there some problem there, right? So just really being much more aware of that. And fundamentally, in terms of definite, it's really hard to feel good about who you are when you do things you don't feel good about, right? That's just doesn't work very well. And then we can start really recognizing, especially with interdependence, the opportunities that we have to be beneficial. And then what are those results? The more self-centered we are, do we have more happiness? I have not found that to be the case. You know, the more we-centered we are, the more connection you have, do you find more happiness? Probably. More self-conscious, more suffering. You know, so you can just really start to see how this works in that way. And out of my insecurity and fears, I'll do more things that are kind of unhealthy and will create, you know, less ease and peace, right? So karma definite. In other words, virtue, it's not that virtue creates the pleasurable thing, even though that's what it is. It was kind of backwards. All this pleasure, you kind of trace it back. Okay, these types of activities have these results. Awesome. But there's no judgment. You know what I mean? It's not about judgment. It's just about hit your hand with a hammer, it's going to hurt. Don't hit your hand with a hammer. You're not going to hurt, right? It's just how things work, right? And that all of these things are generally coming out of just misunderstanding. You know, we're just trying to be happy. We're trying to be okay. And some of us have had less good examples, less nurturing, less conducive situations to be okay. And so I had to work our way through that. And so people have a lot of this good situation. I better get moving on. There's 3 more to go. Okay, karma. Oh gosh, karma is expandable. Guess what? It grows. Yeah. In that a small action can bring a large effect in the same way that a small seed can produce a large tree. Understanding this protects us from being complacent, thinking, this is a tiny action. I don't need to bother with it. Instead, we will take care to avoid small destructive actions and engage in small constructive ones. The groups of utterances, the counsels, like a poison that has been ingested, the commission of even a small negativity creates in your lives hereafter great fear and a terrible downfall. As when grain ripens into a bounty, even the creation of small merit leads in lives hereafter to great happiness and will be immensely meaningful as well. So a couple ways to look at this. One way that commonly thought is it's kind of like a seed, you know, a small activity. Think about a seed. Well, over time, you know, roots will grow, it'll sprout, you know, it can become this much bigger result. But we always have to remember, we don't do anything in isolation. I mean, think about how many things we've done today, right? A lot of stuff going on. So in one way, is the longer a result has to take from the time the seed is, the greater the actual result, right? I mean, it's just the longer it is, that's the deal. So for example, if you're doing something unwholesome, the quicker you can get to intelligent regret and resolve, to not do that again. You just nip it, right? It's not going to grow, right? I did that. I'm going to apologize right now. I'm sorry. Let's just do it right then. I don't have to wait to go do a formal for opponent powers practice or anything. Just say you're sorry right now. And let's stop that. The quicker you can do it, the better. But the other way to look at this is the more I tell like some little lies, the more capacity I have for more lies, right? And then it just becomes that's not a big deal. And then, karma, if you think about habits and tendencies, karma is like that. The more I do one thing, the more it becomes pretty natural for me. And so these little things become bigger things because we wind up doing them more and we become more habituated in those things. And so they really grow in that way. Being comfortable, not telling people the truth gets to be pretty comfortable. And then, we just wind up not doing it a lot. Likewise, virtue, when we tend to, really live in an honest way, it's uncomfortable to not tell the truth. That's why you want to play poker with Laura. Yeah. She's not a good liar at all, man. It just can't happen. There's just, this is somebody you want to play poker with. Right? It's just not her nature, right? It's just not. And so if we start thinking about the little things, they add up. They add up quickly, and those habits add up quickly, and those tendencies add up quickly. And so these little things are going to have a much greater impact because we generally do a lot more little things all day long, generally. So there's this very expansive nature to those habits and those conditions. But from a practical point of view, if there's something unwholesome, the quicker you can address it, the better. And from a practical point of view, don't avoid doing something kind just because it seems small. One of my little things is, it blows my mind. I find it fascinating. I go to a restroom and, you see the trash can and there'll be like some paper towels on the ground around the trash can or around the toilet. It's pretty close, it's not that big a deal. So, I'll pick them up, put them down there. And it just changes the whole environment in the bathroom pretty easily. And it's not very difficult. And so, it's just something I do. I don't do it because I'm trying to create good karma. But I do think I know what it feels like to go in a bathroom and there's that all over the place, whether it's a truck stop or just a regular bathroom here even. It just changes the environment, It's not pick it up, take it down. It's no big deal. But it's pretty easy to skip those things, right? Yeah. And it's not, I'm going to do a little thing to get some little merit, which will add up to big merit. It's like just more having the spirit of, hey, can I create a little nicer environment than the one I walked in? I appreciate when I go into a restroom and it looks like this. And so that kind of thinking comes, and then those little deeds, they just sort of add up to a way of being. And then you just more naturally do it. I did see a plastic bottle being blown across the street as I was walking here, and I thought, if I go get that, I don't know where the trash can is. I'm trying to get there, and I didn't pick it up. And that's come on, how big a deal would it be? Scoot over and get that, and I didn't. I didn't do it. Just watching. No, I was walking. Yeah, I'm so bad. So, we have these little things all day long that we can be cultivating these little things that become just who we are in a real meaningful way. And so little acts, even virtuous thoughts, even taking a little time for gratitude, in meditation, has a much bigger result, especially if we do it more frequently. So it's very expandable. It's expandable in our habits. It's expandable in our way of being. it all contributes to, this way of being and how we experience the world. So even little things, they add up. And, isn't that what's the whole recycle thing? There's 3 steps: reduce, reuse, recycle, right? All of it, right? And, it all adds up. Act locally, think globally, right? So that kind of way of being with the real account that matters. This is the account that's going on, that tape recorder. Except it's probably not a tape recorder now; it's probably digital, right? You might have an algorithm now on a cloud. Buddha, there's probably a bunch of people scribbling down what you did. Papaya or something, that'd be hard. I know, I go into...
Don't you think that can be kind of obsessive though?
Can be.
I mean, I think you could really tap, especially like someone, it could turn really have into heavy duty shame, like I didn't pick up that bottle.
Right.
Or, I mean, you could kind of get super reductionistic on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So online, what's being pointed is you can get in a lot of trouble being real. Keeping track of every little thing and then feeling shameful because, I didn't pick up the plastic bottle and beating ourselves up. And that's why I kept bringing up, don't be like that. Because that approach is, again, self-centered. In a way, it's all about me again. And then it doesn't exactly work that way, right? It's much more of a conditioning and a motivation. And we can get into a lot of shame, we can get a lot of guilt. We can, one person I used to, at our center that we studied at, would come literally anxiety ridden, thinking that she's going to be in the hell realms, because she didn't do this or that, and so it can easily go there.
Caught up in the shoulds. So what about children who engage in non-virtuous activity, but aren't really aware, like they punch the other kid or steal the toy or, how does that?
Yeah, so again, it's going to come back to motivation and awareness, right? So little kids often will have less impulse control and less awareness of the effect of their, punching the other kid or, stealing, the other kid's toy or whatever someone might do. And so that karma is not going to be ripe. And again, it's always coming from these places of what we call ignorance, sort of greed, and, this attachment and aversion, which is driving forces in everything that we do. So kids, again, it's not going to be weighted. But, when we get through, rather than trying to keep score, we just start recognizing that my actions and my thinking, are they creating a prison for me of habits and conditions that will not lead me to healthy relationships and benefiting myself and others and living with more freedom, self-worth, and integrity? Are they doing that? Or are they leading me to more self-worth, learning to share, seeing the values of others, and having a lot more freedom and some value in who I am, right? Going back to just the fundamental psychological model. And that's, understanding that all this karma is doing is just creating a conditioning through which I experience the world. And some of it will clear away all the confusion. Some of it will imprison me in these habits and conditions and make it much more difficult to change. And in early childhood, I can be on a cycle that will really entrench me. Or in early childhood, I can get into some scrapes and some, struggles and do some things, but grow in a way that's not how I want to live, right? My childhood, I did some things. and I managed to be sitting here today, but I'd break in houses, do all kinds of, I was boosting liquor from the liquor store at 10, we don't need to go through that whole list, but so it's getting away from the scorekeeping and getting more focused on the ways that we can cultivate and nourish the more wholesome activities. So again, like the little things can do that. But yeah, what could happen is you could feel bad about very simple things. And a lot of people do that. They'll lead a retreat, go home and retreat. We did 3 days on compassion. They go home and they get angry at somebody and they feel like they've blown the whole retreat, and yet they just spent 3 days, doing a lot of kindness and compassion. And so it can be very harmful to have that kind of myopic view. And that's why context is so important. If fundamentally from the start that you're okay, let's just start there.
Well, just last thought, I think that's where the meditation practice is so important, so that you don't attach to those negative self-deprecating thoughts.
Yeah. And for those of you online, just point out that meditation can be really helpful to allow you to not attach to that critical mind and that shame-based kind of narrative. And there's a big difference, obviously, between guilt and shame, right? I'm okay with feeling pretty guilty about some things I've done because, that allows me to correct my behavior. I did these things, I felt bad about it, I'm going to change my behavior. Shame is, as I know is I'm a bad person. And that's just a whole different frame of reference. And that's where you're not going to find that type of word even in Tibetan. It just doesn't exist. That kind of shame, guilt kind of way of looking at being this bad person. There's not a word in their vocabulary for it. So that's a whole different mind, right? Than ours where, we got a lot of shame. Matter of fact, I think it's pretty common to say shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's just so embedded. It's so easy to be so critical. And it's, I think, such a big part of our journey, as is learn that we're okay. We're valuable, we're worthy. And if you don't already know it, you should watch It's a Beautiful Life. Or A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers movie. Laura and I watched it last week. Man, that guy was awesome. You guys see it yet? A couple of you have. Laura thought I cried. I didn't cry. I was a little emotional. There's some water. Crying's the whole thing. But what a bodhisattva, essentially. And his whole way of being with anyone was to totally, completely accept them as they are, that they're okay, And that's really these teachers are trying to share that same attitude. You're okay. All this confusion, all this stuff, they're the clouds in the sky, but you're the sky. It's not who you are. It is the work to be done. And then we're all okay. We all have some confusions. But our basic nature is Buddha nature. Our basic nature is healthy and well. It's all, there's nothing broken here. And so that's, but it's hard to get to that point in our culture, right? And so much of, I think, our journey is to just learn that on some level. Just at some level, at least. And so we need to, that's where these kind of kind habits. But if I'm keeping score, it's just not helpful. I'm micromanaging, not helpful. But if I notice in general, then I'm doing small acts that I feel good about, and I can do more of those, and it makes the world a better place, and I feel better about it. Then those habits grow in a real healthy way. But if I start beating myself up because I didn't do this or didn't do that, now I'm in a cycle of self-obsession again, and now I'm in that negative track you're talking about, and it happens all the time. Yeah. I really want to get to the third one. At least open the door to it. So let me take a look. It's the third one kind of rocks my world. Number 3, we will not experience the effect of an action we have not done. If we have not created the cause to experience a contagious disease, we will not contract it, even though others around us may. If we do not create the causes to attain awakening, we will not, even though we make many prayers to the Buddha to gain realizations. So just this very simple thing. If you don't create a cause, you won't have a result. So many people look at that as if I don't do a negative thing, I won't have a negative result. What occurs to me is, if I don't create the cause, for example, to not attach to thoughts, like by meditating, I'm not going to have a peaceful mind. And I just find, and I think, for me, I just realize if I want to have peace and ease and liberation, apparently I need to, do a few things. There's no way for me to just expect if I stop doing certain things. But what are the things that I can do that create peace and ease and love and nurturing in my life? I need to actually do those things to make this happen. People, well, I can look at teachers up here and so forth, or, Jetsu Matenza Palmer, but, how are they like that? Well, they worked at it. And so if I want to have peace, ease, loving kindness, resiliency, and well-being, but, I spend my nights watching Netflix and eating donuts, I'm not going to get there, even if they're really good donuts. If I would like a mind that's clear, focused, and has the capacity to attend to, remember, be healthy and well even into my later years, giving into a lot of distraction is not going to get that, right? So what are these sort of habits and things that take me away? And so if I don't get a cause, I don't get results. So if I would like the results to be things around a more clear mind, or some more kindness in my life, or some more peace and ease, well, that's for me, like the meditation, or in the morning, taking a little time to meditate on gratitude. I mean, that's a force, right? There's just gratitude alone. We don't need much more than that. You start meditating every day on some gratitude and some contentment, and then in your day start, I would like to be more content. Well, when's the last time you cultivated contentment? Yeah, when's the last time you just sat there and just started being, content with your life and what's going on? We're probably not very good at that. We're pretty good at cultivating desire. Dusty and Jessica are going to Kauai next month, man. I'm sitting there poking around where we used to stay, and it's like, wow, Laura and I should go there. Now I got desire, right? Where's the contentment? And so I want contentment, but I'm not doing anything to cultivate it. Kind of silly. What if we just start cultivating contentment every day? I mean, that's a primary practice in Tibetan Buddhism. Start cultivating contentment instead of desire. You might have more contentment and less desire. So if I don't create the cause, I don't get the result. And that goes, wholesome or unwholesome. Self-worth. I want some self-worth and value. Well, do some things you feel are worthy and valuable, and you're going to start feeling worthy and valuable. Beating myself up will never give me self-worth. Not the cause for it. And yet I'll beat myself up thinking that'll somehow, get me to be a better person. It doesn't work like that. So if I don't create the cause, I don't get the result. And if I can create the contrary, cause, I'll get the contrary result. And so here, I think, is where I really like to live. Is what am I doing today that's healthy and meaningful that will help me be living a healthy, meaningful life? I want more contentment. Let me cultivate some more contentment. Let me acknowledge and see the good in people around me. If I would like to improve the world I live in, well, let's just start noticing the good around the world I'm living in. And I might kind of start living there. And, or am I, just noticing the things I don't like? So this is the action part for me. If I'm not living in a particular way I would like, what am I not doing to have that? Make sense? Okay, good. So we'll work on 4 next time. 4 is well, I think they're going to unpack 3, but 4 can be a little scary. Like none of this was to begin with. Karmic seeds do not get lost or magically vanish. Yeah, that's fun. So yeah, so we'll unpack that a bit more next week. And so that's basically saying, once it's there, it's there, like it's going to show up. And so, but there are things you can do to mitigate it and work with it. And so that's really important to know. That's where I came in after that teaching. I was like, so these other things. And then everybody starts, breathing a sigh of relief. Because you did that one thing back in kindergarten. It went on your permanent record. You're going to, but karma created, we'll have a result. But we can work with it before it ripens. And so that's a really good thing to do. All right, well, any other thoughts, curiosities popping up here? All right, looks like Martha's got her hand up. You can unmute.
Yeah, hi, thanks, John. I was back at the first karma is definite, and then there was just a statement there toward the end of it that virtue is spiritually and psychologically helpful and beneficial, ethically commendable, not produced under the influence of gross defilements. I don't understand what gross defilements might be referring to.
Yeah, so we have defilements in mind like greed, anger, resentments, that are pretty strong and heavy. And so gross defilement. So we, and then, there's things that aren't quite as heavy. Frustration, for example, is going to be less than anger or rage, right? And so if you think in terms of defilements of the mind, of what we call kleshas, which are afflictions of the mind. And so when we are more at peace, we're less afflicted. Anything that takes you out of that peaceful state is considered an affliction. So most of us live in a very subtle afflicted state because we're not generally at pure peace most of the time, right? We're either not okay or not so okay or distracted or drawn to something else or would like to be doing something. Those are all pretty subtle. But when you're really angry, now you're in a gross defilement, right? A gross affliction. But I could be frustrated. Or no, let's just go irritable. That's a really smaller scale of anger. So anger can go from frustrated, irritable, all the way up to rage, but it's all a spectrum of anger, right? It's all in the anger spectrum. So if you think of gross, more in these heavier, more identified and immersed with that afflictive state, that would be gross versus more subtle, and so a lot of things that, we can do that are less afflicted, and even being kindness and so forth and caring can still be coming from affliction. I can be kind, because I want something or I want you to like me or, I'm not really, giving freely and still wanting you to like me and I'm keeping track because, I did this for you and you do this for me. So those are going to be a lot lighter afflictive states, but they're still self-centered.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm sure nobody here keeps score of like how much we've helped someone. I've never said, after all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. Yeah, it's tricky business. All right, well, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit. Oh, yeah, we'll dedicate the merit and then we'll see about announcements. We'll dedicate first. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have cultivated from our time together. For the benefit of all beings and for our own continued spiritual growth. Let's dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, and I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Such a joy to be with all of you and have the opportunity to share in these precious teachings. Do hope you find them beneficial.
Thanks, John. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Be well. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.